Blackstone Audio presents The River King's Road, a novel of Ithelas by Liane Merciel, read by Stefan Rudnicki. For Mom and Dad, who took me to the library week after week, year after year, and almost never complained about the late fees. And Peter, who keeps me something close to sane. 1. Autumn 1217. Brys Tarnell was not a pious man. It saved his life that day. The attack came at high sun, when Sir Gallifred of the Bull's March and most of his men were in the tiny chapel of a tiny hamlet, observing their daily prayers. Ever since Gallifred had married his pious young wife out of sea-watch, he'd become much more religious. All through their journey she'd insisted that they stop at the nearest chapel for noon prayers, and he had obliged. By now their custom was well known, and the village solaros usually had the chapel ready for them before they arrived. Brys, alone among the knights in Gallifred's retinue, was not anointed to the sun, and so was permitted, even expected, to avoid that daily bit of nonsense. He had just stepped out of the village inn to answer nature's call when he heard the thrum of bowstrings and saw the first flight of fire arrows, trailing dark smoke against the bright sky, arch in through the chapel's open windows. There were a dozen men waiting outside the chapel doors, hard-faced men, armored in oiled leather and chain, who carried swords better than any bandit could afford. They stood to either side of the doors, hidden from the view of those inside, but plain to any other eyes. Yet none of the villagers had called a warning. Ambush. It shouldn't have surprised him. They'd been fools to venture across the border, chasing a half-real hope of peace into Langmyr. But then Sir Gallifred had never been the wisest of men. Brave, but not wise. He'd walked right into their trap, and he'd brought his wife and infant son with him. The men outside the chapel wore no colors, but Brys was a veteran of 1,000 fights on field and in alley, and he needed no herald's signs to tell him that he was looking at castle-trained soldiers. These were not cowherds driven to desperation. These were killers, and the killing started when Gallifred's men staggered from the chapel, coughing and red-eyed from smoke. Young Cedric Alsering was the first one out. Doubled over, wiping at his streaming eyes, he never had a chance to see his death before it took him. The men at the door said nothing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?